Herzlich willkommen, liebe Gäste, im Namen der Architekturdialoge Basel. Ich begrüße Sie zu unserer Veranstaltung Gateway Architecture Access to Open Cities in einem Vergleich zwischen Basel und Zürich. Die Architecture Dialogues is a foundation that has been run by a group of engaged architects over the last 18 years. And we are a platform for architecture, and our goal is to make contemporary architecture accessible to professionals as well as to lay people in various formats over the years. And our offerings and lectures and always free of charge. Why gateway architecture? If we come to a city by car or by plane, we mostly do not encounter with the city. Airports are cities themselves outside the city, and with the cars we normally pass by cities. The train stations bring us direct in first contact with cities. The spatial impact of train stations in European cities and their contemporary urban design is in a wave of station renewals, of expansion of railway stations in various kinds. The importance of the train station in a historical development of cities are no longer shaped as the train station, the monolithic train station itself, as an architectural cathedral, like the grand stations. They interweave in the world of passerby with that of the local inhabitant as a system of public infrastructure and facilities. Zurich has developed its area around the main station as a key development and urban hub. Coming from Basel, we see it as the gateway to Zurich. KCAP's Kees Christianse is here to speak about his master planning of the Europa Allee. SBB has recently developed the south side of the train station in Basel, and now will be developing the Nauentor as a gateway from the east in a series of other developments that are happening around the train station Basel, like the Bank of International Settlements and the Baloise campus. Nauentor will be the city gate, also for cars coming in from the east, and a hinge between the neighborhoods and to the city. Bruter, with Jan Kinsbergen and Trouvon-Rodet, won lately the competition and started this project. We will start with the keynote of Bruter, Alexandre Deriot, with office in Paris and Zurich. Alexandre and Stéphanie Brou founded the Paris-based studio in 2007. Alexandre holds a chair at the ETH, and Stéphanie is a full professor at the UDK in Berlin. They build experimental structures or architecture mostly in Paris and its suburbs, and hopefully soon in Basel. Please welcome Alexandre from Bruter to Basel. Thank you.
Does it work? Yeah, it works. Okay, good afternoon. Really glad to be here. I think you are super lucky to have such a fantastic screen. I never saw the images in such size. So it's more or less 15-20 minutes just to talk, maybe not only to talk about Nauentor, but just to talk probably about Basel, probably about our main concerns. And probably at first, where should I, like that, yeah? But this is not the right presentation, I think. Okay? Okay, good. So I will talk without images. That's not really a problem, but let's say maybe to explain a little bit more about the context and probably about the team, because such a problem or such a project, this amount of issues, you need a team. And the team is, of course, quite crucial. So in the team, there are a lot of engineers, and at first, probably a set of, let's say, a set of leaders. So we are, let's say, one part of this team, Brute. So as Christian said, we practice in Paris, so mostly in France, and now in Switzerland, and especially in Zurich, and now in Basel. So you have this fantastic chance. And as you can see, probably through those different drawings, to just this obsessive document, we have, let's say, 4 plans. Let's say how to organize the things, how to organize the distributive cores, how to create, as you called, open structures, just to offer as much as possible. So this is one, let's say, one of our preoccupations. And of course, we have some fantastic partners. 2 of them, I mean, Truan Rodet and Jan Kinsberger. So, I mean, it's not the first project. We did a set of projects. We did a set of competitions. We lost all of them. But we built a sort of common ground with a set of preoccupations. So we did a lot of competitions for towers in Winterthur. Why, I'm not really sure to have a precise explanations for that, but that was fantastic research about how to combine different types of program. And at first, let's say this urban preoccupation, so how a really simple device, so an architectural device can transform the city or can amplify the city. So this is different types of competitions, and all the time it was fantastic experience, fantastic collaboration, and fantastic discussions. And then when we saw the application, we said, okay, we should go and we should try. Probably we are not, let's say, maybe we will be selected. And we've been selected, and it was a fantastic moment. And probably because we have this practice at ETH, we have some preoccupations, and Basel is one part of those preoccupations. So we did a lot of, so mainly, I mean, our preoccupation is our air, comfort, lightness, multiplicity. So this is more or less the topics that we deal every semester, and every semester we deal with a specific territory. And 4 times we worked with Basel, because we are quite stimulated with Basel. So we did a lot of researches just to try to explain exactly what is Basel in terms of infrastructure, let's say about organization. So each document is not really important, but just to say that the main preoccupation is, of course, this urban preoccupation about how to transform the city, let's say not, and that will be probably interesting to discuss about the tools to transform the city, in our case, just by dealing with constructions and buildings. So this is different situations, so probably you know that this is a Dreispitz, so about history, about how to transform, what about the density, what kind of density we should achieve, should we demolish or should we keep the things, what about the climate, what about the future. So this is really a set of researches that we did with students, so they are not architects, or they will be, or some of them are already architects, but just to see how, again, we can transform the city. Also because the airport is one part of the city, how to increase the potential of because we talk about gateway, and the airport is also, of course, a sort of hub, and also a place, a sort of entrance in the territory. So this is really not too, let's say, probably too long, and considering, let's say, the time we have, but just to say that there are different situations in the city that we can transform, that are part of the city, even if it's industrial plots, situations, but we have to consider them because they have a potential, they have a fantastic opportunities in terms of landscape, in terms of use, in terms of space. So this is just a set of different, diverse documents just to see let's say, the potential maybe of Basel. And of course, so I will try to go faster because there are probably too much, but the port is of course a part of this research, so how to produce quite specific infrastructures just to bring probably also new uses, how to transform maybe Novartis campus in housing, so that was a part of the process. But of course, each time it's asking questions about the future of the city and what are the potentials. So I will probably not describe the images and maybe to talk about temporary structures. So what is a space? Do we have to build for the next 100 years or do we have to build temporary structures? So this is just a set of examples. Just also how to teach what could be, let's say, how to produce energy and how to deal with this kind of infrastructures. So a lot of images. So just to talk about the city, this is probably what we try to deal with the new generation and just to say what could be the possibilities in terms of transformation. So you know the place maybe more than I know, but this is a fantastic situation. This is a fantastic building, so you know it quite well. This is this sort of huge, let's say, dead infrastructure in the middle of the city. And I think, let's say, of course, all the studies that happened before we won the competition were really crucial. Let's say to say that there is an important challenge for the city just to reinforce the links between the two parts of the city. So the brief was quite simple, quite efficient, and not really a lot of ways to escape, or let's say, but let's say the form is the form, and but we have to explain the form. So that's, of course, our preoccupation. Is the question is the right one to demolish everything and to rebuild? And for that, we had more or less 9 months to propose, to discuss, to analyze, and just to see exactly how this fantastic situation and this fantastic opportunity could be transformed, could be enriched, and could be more than what it is. So that's what we did. And I think this dialogue, so of course, a competition, when it's 1 year, it's too long. I mean, too long for many reasons. But at the same time, that's a fantastic opportunity really to take time to think about the transformation. So of course, from all of us, Jan, Charlotte, Dries, Stephanie, and all the team, the main question was, of course, does it make sense to demolish this incredible infrastructure? So that was really the first question we asked ourselves, considering that this is, okay, we can talk about the color, but the color is not really the main point. It's just this fantastic infrastructure, the process to build it. So we did a sort of intense research about history, let's say why it was built like that. Let's say these amazing beams, so how to keep them. Of course, this was one part of the project, but let's say how to keep as much as possible. And transforming the situation, keeping, let's say, the main ideas that were developed, but just to transform and add and keep as much as possible. So of course, you cannot keep everything in a way, so we tried, but you can reuse, so it means that some parts of the floors, some parts of the columns, some parts of the beams can be reused. And that was more or less one of the main preoccupations we had. So we opened this discussion and this debate with the jury. So it was, of course, a lot of questions because they already decided a long time ago to demolish. So that was really an interesting step. So in our case, I mean, this notion of infrastructure, as you said before, or open urban infrastructure was really the main preoccupation. So how to reconnect this huge logistic building with the city. So of course, we are above the railways, not so easy to connect something which is completely disconnected from the ground, but that's what we try to do to reinforce the relationship between Gundeli and Gross Basel. So how to find all the means, the bridge, the pathways, and so on, all the means just to reinforce and just to use this infrastructure really as a hub for pedestrians, for bicycles, for cars, and so on. So, but really to consider that this space and this building has to relate the different parts of the different parts of the city. So of course, with the main station, but considering all the rest of the different things. So this document is probably one of the crucial documents that we produced during the competition, which is, so I'm not really sure that again, but let's say the idea was, of course, not to reinforce just the connection from one side to the other one, but also just to reinforce probably the link with this highway for bicycles, and just to relate this part of the city with Dreispitz and so on. So really to pass through. Probably the first act was, in a way, to cut in three parts this huge building and to create a public space on the ground, not somewhere in the building on the first, third, or fourth floor, but just on the ground. Just considering that the city is at first the relationship of the buildings with the ground floor. So this is really the basic scheme that we did, and then so we try really to reinforce the identity of each part of the city. And of course, considering this very simple scheme, let's say how the people will pass through from one side to the other one, so how, let's say, the building will be animated by the transportation, so by pedestrians, by, let's say, the different connections with the streets, also, of course, with the tram station that we have below. So it's how to reconnect the different parts of the city. So in this section, so you can see the plinths. So, of course, now enter part, and the green part is, of course, the public part of the project. In the below, let's say, this green line, we have all the railways. So this is this sort of a huge table that we had to keep in the project, and above the different parts of the project with the three high-rise buildings that were defined in the master plan. So I think this document tried to express, let's say, all the different means to reconnect, to pull the project to the ground, and just to reconnect it with the activity of the surrounding. So of course we did a lot of researches in terms of volumes, in terms of how to, because this super fat building, you have to bring light, natural light. So we did a lot of, so this one is probably, is the first model that we present for the first jury. So, and then in a way, step by step, we try to define more and more what is so important to preserve, and of course, what is this gallery, so this very simple device that will define, and that will be probably the art of the project. So in our case, so you know quite well this view, and in our case, of course, the goal is just to split these fat buildings in two parts, basically. So, and just to create this continuity between both sides of the city, following the network of the railways. So this space is quite important, 20 meters in terms of, width, and 100 meters long. So it's a space. It's an unburned space. So there are a lot of, in the history, there are a lot of spaces like that. And the wish is, of course, that this space can be 100 spaces or 1,000 spaces. So it means it could be what we really want to, how we want to use this space. So we called it the everyday life space. It means that it could be an exhibition space. It could be just, it could be an exhibition space. It could be an art exhibition space. It could be a concert. It could be what do we want? So this is what we try to reinforce, just to say that this is a public space, this is a public square, and this public square can welcome different types of events, and it could be, let's say, just this flowers fair, let's say a space that we can close, that is basically just covered, and that can welcome a huge amount of activities, and so a public space, basically. In terms of organization for the functions, I'm not completely sure that we have to jump in this detail, because I did not check the... yeah, but that's probably not the right... I have 1 minute, okay. So we have a lot of things in this building. So main part of the competition, or let's say of this project, this is the blue part and this is housing. So the housing part is, of course, above the plinths, and we try to split, let's say, all the different functions considering, let's say, the best location. But in a way, we know that probably this building will be built in 8 or 9 or 10 years. So it means probably we will have to make it evolve. Then it means that we have to find all the tools, all the means to help that we can transform everything until the end. So this is why we call it open structure, in the fact that the uses are crucial, but we also have to think about this capacity of the building to be transformed, to be something else than what it is at the first time. So this is really about transformation, but the transformation of the existing thing or the existing building in itself. So this is just the basic organization of the ground floor. So you see, of course, the main station is in the top part of the document. Then the gallery will pass through and will continue in the other building. So this is probably mainly the ground floor will be dedicated to retail. Let's say the most probably complex part of the project. This is this sort of structural table where you have this huge beam, so that divide the space in 5 cells. So this is, of course, the level where we will bring the bicycles that will probably use this, the ramp on the top part of the drawing will pass through the building and will turn just to reach the path. So there are different ways just to use and just to pass through this building. Also in the upper level, so where we have the office part, so the office building. So this is those 3 parallel elements with gardens in between. We have those collective spaces and public spaces that will follow, let's say, just the space along the bridge. So, I mean, we tried, of course, this huge infrastructure. I mean, the main challenge for us was how to simplify as much as possible the device, how to have a very clear statement in terms of organization, and just to offer something that could evolve through time. And we already know that the expectations, the constraints, the different technical constraints related with the railways will have an impact on the organization of the building, though this is really a continuous process to rearrange the space. We have on the top floor, let's say, this private and public space. So this is a public garden. This is not the main space, but this is an extra space where you can suddenly have a specific relationship or a specific view considering all the surroundings. So this is more or less where we are. All the documents that we shared today are what we did for the competition. The project already evolved, but this is a work in progress. So this is just a normal situation. This is, I think, just a really important statement was, of course, how to keep as much as possible. That's what we try to express through this very interesting document. So how to remove some parts, but how to reuse the parts that we removed. So we try to keep and add just what we need. So this preoccupation is reusing an existing structure and how to keep as much as possible and how to add just what we need and not more. So this is why we did during the competition, and we continue this research, let's say, how to optimize as much as possible. So our experience as a French office dealing all the time with this question of economy is, of course, a lever, let's say, just to go further. So I think probably I shouldn't, but that's what I talk about, let's say, reversibility. So how a space, which is an office space, can be transformed in housing building. So that was also a preoccupation that we shared with with Post, and I think that's quite crucial that we try to conceive infrastructures that have this capacity to evolve in terms of use, in terms of space, but by keeping as much as possible what it is. So this is just the model. This is, of course, what is important to keep. This is what we try to do, creating links with the city restoring, let's say, what was which disappeared, let's say, or the relationship between the ground and then the building. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandre. We are looking forward to get these new spaces around our train station. Now we will hear the keynote of Kees Christianse. He studied architecture and city planning at the TU Delft, and he was for about 10 years in the 80s practicing for OMA in Rotterdam, where he became a partner. Then he founded his own office, operating till today as KCAP, with offices in Rotterdam, Paris, Shanghai, Seoul, and Singapore, as well as Zurich, where he also lived. He headed the Institute of Architecture and Planning at the ETH in Zurich from 2003 till 2018, and was also involved in the Future Cities Lab in Singapore. He is and was the master planner of the Europa Allee, with 8 plots or 8 architects that designed buildings in Zurich. A mega project with a long story. After your presentation, we will start the panel with the moderation of Judith Scholz. She is the architect and chief editor of the weekly Swiss magazine Tech 21. Please welcome Kees Christianse.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Super project you did. I like it very much. I'm going to read my text because then I will stay in time. So I got the title Gateway Architecture, Access to Open Cities. It sounds a bit contradictory. Gateway suggests the transition from something gated to something open, or the other way around. Most gateway projects tend to be rather gated, like for instance La Défense in Paris, which was one of the 8 projects of our Grand Projet research we carried out at ETH Future Cities Laboratory in Singapore. And of the 8 projects, there are some more interesting gateway projects, if you like. For instance, West Kowloon in Hong Kong, comprising a public transit hub around a high-speed terminus to China, which actually is a giant covered shopping mall with interior connections to multiple buildings, among which Uli Six and Herzog and de Meuron's M+ Museum, which openness is threatened by Chinese censorship and, of course, by the shopping mall. There are no gateways, actually. Most of the time you enter in a shopping mall. King's Cross in London, the other one, which can be seen as a contemporary gateway designed as an open public space network in private property, but maintained by the city, with active ground floors behind which, however, very exclusive programs hide with access tourniquets to their interiors, like the London Google headquarters that you can see here. One should say that King's Cross is maybe a wolf in sheepskin. It looks open, but it is actually rather gated. While La Défense has become a sheep in wolfskin, it gradually evolves from a functionally segregated modernist ensemble into a more open mixed-use urban centrality. While Kowloon embodies the Asian ideal of super-density, consumer-cum-transit condition. These 3 projects each are representative of their time and place, but also of urban transformation potentials after their disadvantages have been detected. A further observation is that although these are places of arrival, maybe except for La Défense, which is the least an arrival place and the most gateway-like, they are not exactly gateways. we actually arrive often by underground tunnels in the middle of the city and not at a gate. This is even so in many European airports. In the polycentric urban condition, you see here a map of the Ruhr area that we draw in the spirit of the previous London map by Patrick Abercrombie, which many cities characterize. One can better speak of complementary centralities than about gateways. Polycentric centralities are much more important in the contemporary city than the notion of gateway. Singapore has decided to follow the path of polycentric transformation. Next to the central core, which you see in the middle, there will be 3 more further centers on the island. Woodlands in the north, the gateway to Malaysia. Changi around the airport, also a gateway if you like. And Jurong Lake District, the terminus of the future high-speed railway to Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok and Kunming, at the edge of the industrial port and the innovation districts. In the master plan for Jurong Lake District by KCAP, we first comprised the given footprint of the quarter, creating green islands in the lake instead of buildings, and this meant that the density of the build-up area had to be increased to a maximum. Then we created a generous central park through the length of the quarter, under which lies a large box containing the high-speed railway station, as well as bus terminals, parking and logistics. This also prevented the creation of multiple mutual dependencies. The station and the quarter can be developed fully independent of each other. Preventing dependencies is a very important approach in ground project planning. Are we going to have a demonstration? The rest of the quarter, which has a favorable footprint between blue-green and built volume, is divided into urban blocks with narrow multi-directional streets oriented towards the general wind direction in order to provide a maximum of shade and a maximum of wind, contrary to what we want to do here. Streets are designed in a flexible way in order to gradually evolve to a car-free condition in the end situation. The ground floor and mezzanine levels of the blocks are not only open for active street fronts, they are also porous in order to allow passages, which may be covered horizontally, but open to ventilation vertically, allowing for inner block labyrinths in which also larger institutions like schools or clean industry can be housed. This would be very good for your project, this block. As the maximum allowed height is 120 meters, due to airspace and industry constraints, all buildings are to be precisely 120 meters as we prescribed, covered with a roof garden in order to characterize the quarter with a hovering green carpet. In the wake of recent experiments in naturally ventilated housing typologies, access spaces of buildings are in the open air and individual aircon units are replaced by district cooling, as cooling is the highest energy consumer in Singapore. As you can see, there is no specific gateway architecture. The quarter develops more into a coherent urban neighborhood and center for its surroundings, well knowing that Singaporean architects, as you can see here, will try to go as far as they can within our urban design guidelines. In relation to the previous projects, which are all running into 6-digit GFA square meter numbers, the Europa Allee in Zurich is peanuts with about 200 to 300 square meters, depending on what you consider as Europa Allee. It's more like the extension of a village center. It is primarily not designed as a gateway ensemble. KCAP tried to create an integration of the area with the surrounding street pattern and quarter, which continue into the scheme. Thus, a diagonal boulevard with a wasp waste in the middle connects Zurich main station with the Langstrasse ending at a square in the former red light district. This is the people of our office about 3 years ago. Now, due to the crisis in the world, they are about half the number. The other streets are the prolongation of the neighborhood streets, and not to be forgotten, along the railway, the platform is prolonged, creating a kind of walking quay along the tracks, rendering the quarter most porous, including some bridges. In our initial proposal, a dynamic massing model was to determine the volume of the buildings. The main parameters, shade, daylight, and solar exposure, as well as view lines and noise protection, provided envelopes within which architecture projects could freely develop. However, political motives pressed for a maximum height of 40 meters for the buildings, with an exception to 60 in the middle square. Contrary to the initial gossip about these kind of projects, that they are too large scale, that they are inhuman, that they are monofunctional, this project contains about 40% housing, 40% offices, 20% amenities and social infrastructure, like a school and a cultural center with cinema. In the meantime, the project has been fully accepted, rather as a vibrant extension of the city center and not as a standalone project. Contrary to King's Cross, Google has not her own building in the Europa Allee, but rented a considerable number of buildings in the Europa Allee, which they wanted to connect by bridges over the streets. We were able to prevent this. Google employees have to go to grade level, through a lobby, then go out to the next building while activating public space. Clean industry like Google returning to the city is a very good trend against hermetic, car-dependent suburban development like Apple's headquarters, which is gated as the iOS operating system. In 2009, I was curator of the Rotterdam Architecture Biennale, for which I chose the theme Open City, which was also a tribute to Jane Jacobs, who did not coin the term in words, but who described and analyzed the characteristic of an open city condition for the first time. Her plea also included the right to access to the city, as well as to resources. In European urban design, these characteristics, which include active street fronts, diversity in design, typology and program, affordable housing, mix of working and living, walkability, placemaking, and public transit connectivity. Luckily, these principles have become mainstream, even increasingly in suburban development. Unfortunately, the original meaning of open city, namely a city in a war zone, which the conflicting parties have agreed not to attack in order to protect refugees and citizens, is not yet on the agenda in the Ukraine and the Middle East, where both civilians and urban structures are under attack. Despite this, we, an international group of architects, planners, cities, government agencies, schools and NGOs, are taking the initiative to set up an IBA, an International Building Exhibition, in the Ukraine according to the German model, which initiates and implements sustainable reconstruction projects on smaller and larger scale across the Ukraine under the patronage of the new European Bauhaus. As we already have engaged several twins of Western European and Ukrainian cities, we also would like to invite the city of Basel to join this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for these two very interesting lectures. Now join me on stage. Thank you so much. Well, perfect. So my name is Judith Schult. I have the honor to host this discussion panel. Willkommen. You will have the possibility to ask questions and also to discuss with the referents on stage. Yes, we have about half an hour, so we have time. We will maybe start first on stage, and then you can ask your questions. In German, if you like, I could translate. Anyway, I would like to start with a question that that actually with the topic that you both touched in your talks, and it's about evolving, because the urban planning to which these gateway situations and I mean these railways that are just not just railways. It's not only about transportation. It's also about living. It's a mix of uses. So it's really a part of the city, and so this is really part of urban planning. It's a strategic part of urban planning. Urban planning operates with very long-term projects. So what you plan today will be built maybe in this generation, maybe in the next generation, and it will have to work for the next and the next after that. So you have to think in very long time slots. You have to make decisions today. You have to make up rules today, because you have to get commitments today, so you need some kind of stability. And on the other hand, you don't want to destroy options for later, so you have to keep possibilities to evolve, to change the rules, to find new rules, to adapt to new conditions, new social or economical trends. So how can you manage to find this balance between commitment and freedom, between order and creative chaos, maybe? Who would like to start?
I can start.
Yes.
Thank you for the. That's of course a crucial point that I probably forgot to mention. But let's say the relationship with time, and of course this is the key point. And then so this is what we have to deal all of us all the time. Let's say because let's say now as the condition, or one of the main condition of the projects now, this is let's say the time, but more than the time, this is the fact that the conditions can evolve and could change for financial reasons, for different. There are different reasons to change. So and I think if you accept the fact that maybe what you are thinking about will have to evolve, it means that you just have to define quite precisely what is so crucial to keep. So I think that's, and probably we could say that the project that we are developing with Truand Rodet and Jan Kitzbergen, I think is a part of this question, because we know that what we designed will probably have to evolve for different reasons. There are many reasons to change. So we have to consider this condition as a starting point, but then so we have to say what is so crucial to keep. And that's probably what we try to share today, this, the fact that there are some very simple decisions that we took in the project. Could happen many things, but if we, let's say, probably in the project, one of the important decisions was to bring, let's say, the urbanity, or let's say just to create this gallery just by cutting. And maybe we will have to adapt the project, considering that maybe we will need 20 years to do that. But it's okay. I think it's just, we just have to be agile enough just to adapt the device and just to play with those conditions. So, and I think that's the same everywhere, considering, let's say, it's not the question of the scale of the project. I think all the project has to be able just to evolve, not only through the time, through long time, but also during the studies, because suddenly you have a new expectation from the client, because there is an economical condition that you will have to save money. So I think, let's say, that's the way that we try to work in our daily practice, just to accept that the things can change. And we have to accept them, but we have to find the means to react and just not to reduce the ambitious, but just to adapt the ambitious.
Mm-hmm. Adapt the ambitions, and somehow you have also to manipulate them. So you have mentioned the economical pressure, and the economical pressure is especially high at the crucial places, which are, as you also both mentioned, the ground floor, so the street level, the place where the pedestrians come, arrive and pass, and maybe also stay and use the public space. And so you have both pointed out the importance of this public space, of the openness, of the accessibility to those public spaces. But then the pressure is high, so you have to find strategies. And at Europaallee, for example, you have so the street level uses are somehow cross-financed by the rent of the upper floors. So the SBB, so the commissioner, decided that it was strategically important to have those small local stores also in the ground floor, to have diversity, to have cultural activities, and they actively are trying to keep them. But one can ask what will happen in the future, and how can you make sure that this kind of diversity can stay?
Yeah, I think I like his project because it has a certain structuralist approach in which you define necessary structural elements around which other things can completely change. I was educated by Team 10 professors, Bakema, Herzberger, Van Eyck, and so on. So I very much value this approach, and it's also very familiar to urban design approach, because most architects are architects. They work within the aesthetics of their own taste, but we as urban designers are the coordinator of everybody's bad taste in a way. And it's very important to develop robust urban public space structures in which you define building fields, and then develop urban design guidelines, which are very locally adjusted, that define the qualities of the place, but at the same time leave an enormous amount of leeway for different developments and also for future change. So this is why we work, we are more or less specialists in urban design guidelines. We created this street pattern, which is very banal. It's only the continuation of the existing streets, and only the diagonal boulevard is new. And what was very important is to create this quay along the railway tracks, not create buildings with a dead end. And this creates a kind of public space grid, isolating building blocks. These building blocks then have guidelines, and these guidelines are, first of all, they have a kind of urban plinth, and consequently they have rules that provide guarantees about daylight access, etc. Within which then architects are free to mold their programs or their buildings. And indeed, one of the key requirements most of the time in our schemes is leaving the grade level and the mezzanine level completely flexible and open for transformation all the time. In the Europaallee, it's true that along the facade to the neighborhood, all the shops were having half of the rent, and they were small, in order to allow neighborhood activity to settle into the ground floor of this project. Yeah, but of course, the Europa is also a little bit of a Truman show in the sense it's one developer, namely the railway company. So it's a kind of it's rather easy, you know. It's for me, it's not the most complicated project to do.
Mm-hmm. But when you say that that the developer decided that it was strategically a good idea to open this Europaallee, to open this area to the neighborhood, to encourage, also financially encourage local people, local stores, local firms to come here, then they somehow acknowledge the quality of openness. So they really wanted to integrate into the city. They
I think, first of all, it's a public institution, the Swiss Railway Company. Secondly, there was an extremely strong influence of the city. Because the city has, of course, the tools to stop development in certain ways. So there was an extremely big influence of the city. The SBB is a public institution, so they're not kind of developing like other developers. They are quite thinking about the public values. So in that sense, there was quite quickly an agreement. And you must not forget, it was also a competition. It was a so-called test planning process with something like 5 different teams. And our team was the team that had the kind of most robust and porous public space system of the 5 submissions. Mm-hmm. There was a big discussion about social housing, Genossenschaftswohnungen. People found it a scandal that there is no social housing. But people forget that the other side of the tracks is also Europaallee, is also by the SBB, and is about 50% social housing, first of all. And secondly, the profit of the development all goes into the improvement of the rail infrastructure. So we don't have to do here with a kind of banal development project in that sense. And you can also see in the kind of mix of uses that it's quite delicate. There's a whole polytechnical school housed in the project as well.
Mm-hmm. What was the situation here in Basel with the Nauentor? Was there also the wish of the city to create as much public space and as much as openness as possible? What was the situation here, or was it just in the competition that it was rewarded that you did it?
Let's say I think there is an ambition which is quite high, of course, from the beginning. Of course, before we arrive. So I think they define the conditions, probably which, let's say, you know, when you start a competition, you have to be sure that the question that the client asks is the right one, or the client, or let's say the city. And I think just to have public space in this urban situation is obvious. It's obvious, but what kind of space? And I think that was probably the main debate. I was not in the jury, of course. But in a way, I think one of the main preoccupations was what kind of public space. Do we have to bring a public space? It was this topic of the magistral. So this idea that the public space should cross the railways, so it means completely disconnected from the public, so from the natural ground. And that's probably the key discussion, I guess. But then so we just have this very simple approach, considering that we should probably try to keep the public space next the ground, or let's say, and of course they are not just one public space. There is a set of public spaces, a different type, with different scales. So how they, let's say, each phase of this quite huge infrastructure will react, considering the surrounding, and that's right. I mean, let's say, the goal, or let's say our responsibility is just to relink the things, or let's say relink, of course, the people, but create links with the surrounding, bring, let's say, deal with the fluxes, or let's say how the people will use, will pass, will stay, and so on. So this is really the main challenge for such a project. And I think this is the key point. I mean, it's not really the color of the window. Of course, it will be important, but at first we just have to find a sort of clear agreement about what is exactly the ambitious and what about the means. So I think maybe we try to re-question the ambitious of the city and the ambitious of the SBB, but not by saying the ambitious is wrong. Of course, it's not. It's obvious, but the way to do it and the way just to introduce this publicness in the project was just to say probably we should not try to disconnect this public space from the ground. So it's really basic, really terre à terre, but I think this is the questions that we have to deal with for such a project.
Yes, you are talking about opportunities, and actually both projects are huge opportunities, because actually this the place where Europaallee is today, there used to be infrastructure for the railways. So the city stopped somewhere, then you had the infrastructure, and then you had the railway tracks. So you never, from the city, you never got into contact with the railway tracks. And it's a similar situation with the Rostbalken, which is like a forbidden city between the two Gundeldingen and Groß-Basel, and in between of them you have the railway tracks, and on top of it you have the forbidden city. And now both places are being opened. So in Europaallee now you have the Europaallee is just like the joint between the railway tracks and the city, and also on the other side you have like the visual connection between the two parts of the city, which it didn't exist before. And also for the Rostbalken, which means that you will be able to cross, to enter this place first of all, and then to cross it. So those are really big, huge opportunities to make those forbidden places into gateways, not only for the persons who arrive by train, but also for the residents of the city. So it's they are actually very open gates at the moment between several existing places of the two cities, Zurich and Basel.
Yeah, we try to. Our idea was you should go from the neighborhood into the area, not noticing it, and then when you are in the Europaallee on the boulevard, suddenly think, oh, I'm in something different. So that was the idea, but which it works. But the problem is, they widened up the street between the neighborhood and the Europaallee because of the reservation for a tram track. And so the distance is a little bit too big in the end. Yeah.
So that is an option for the tram line.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which at the moment is not used. Okay. I think also an interesting aspect is that that Nauentor is crossing the railway tracks, while Europaallee is parallel to it.
Yeah.
So there is a connection, but it's only a visual one. The physical connection is actually parallel to the the
there's
tracks.
a new footbridge, huh?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So actually you get access to these railways, but without using them. So it's really yeah. And also actually both situations are very close to the train stations, of course. I would like to point out maybe one more aspect before we open the discussion. That's the commercialization of the railway stations. So, as you have mentioned, railway stations used to be like huge monumental buildings where you came and then you saw that's a railway station. Today's railway stations are more and more becoming like similar to shopping malls actually. So you have a very huge shopping malls, and then somewhere you can also get access to the trains. There is a big transformation, and also so the railway stations are not anymore one place, but they are like defunding into the cities. Mm-hmm. And also with those new developments, they somehow get together with the city, because you have also several accesses to the tracks.
Mm. But that's fantastic, no? No, it's nice that a station is not just a train station. Then it means that probably now there are, let's say, we can say that this is a shopping, or it's a shopping mall, or but it could be more. I mean, it's maybe a step in the, I mean, let's say, what could it be? It could, many different other functions could, let's say, enrich the existing devices. So I think that's, I mean, the fact that we densify, let's say, we amplify the density of use, I mean, it's fantastic. I think, let's say, if we think about, let's say, what was a station, a train station 30 years ago, and what it is now, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I mean, that's a new polarity in the city. So it's not just a hub for transportation. I think you can do more than just take the train and reach another city. And so I think it becomes a space in itself, a space where you can do more. And I think, let's say, how to amplify, let's say let's say space. I think it's super. I mean, that's nice. And if you can live there, and if you can live this landscape, and I think this is probably also the opportunity in our tour. I mean, suddenly you have. I mean, this is it could become something public. So it means that this is something that you can share, or let's say. So I think this is really interesting. But that's something that I mean, let's say many of your projects. I mean, those questions are really important, and that's probably one of the main change in the last 40 years. Let's say, in the fact that it's not just for transportation; it's more and more. And let's say, we just have to check all the stations. I mean, Zurich, Basel, and so on, but just I mean, all over the world. So I think it's super positive condition. No?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. Zurich is specifically good because it has this living room in the old hall, which is perfect. Then it has the shopping underneath, and then it has a true station underneath that. So the Europa is a little bit eccentric. So it's a whole constellation which together functions very well. But there is a danger that in the future you get out of your train into a real shopping mall, you know. It happens now in airports, you know. It's even here in Zurich. You come out of the airport and they force you, before you go to your luggage pickup, they force you to go through this terrible tobacco and parfum spaghetti. And I think for a while I was the chief architect of Schiphol Airport, and we prevented this. We stopped this tendency against the will of the commercial people. Of course, now, 10 years later, it's also like this. I think that this is also a danger for railway stations. The European railway station is very attractive still in general. Gare de Lyon, Amsterdam, Zurich. But we have to watch out very much that you are not kind of coming out of your train directly into a shopping mall in the future.
Mm-hmm. So you have to find this balance.
Yeah.
Yes. I have to ask a question. Do we have to stop, or can we continue? Ah, very good, because this is, you know, like making nervous signs. But then I'm very happy to hear. And to open the panel, so if you have questions, please ask them. I see a hand here. Yes? Please wait for the microphone so that everyone in the live stream also can hear the question.
I had the pleasure before to meet Kees Christianse, and now both of you on stage. I was wondering if you are both not Zurich-based or Basel-based, if you think it makes a difference that you can come in for these projects from the outside, and that you have a different view to it. If you would be born in these cities, if that would maybe make a difference, because you don't have that emotional, social, or even political relations, so you can be more open-minded, maybe.
Oh, I don't know about that. I came to Zurich 20 years ago, and I found it like Amsterdam in the 1970s, very much. I was born in Amsterdam and raised in the 70s in the Netherlands. And this kind of very small but very cosmopolitan atmosphere with a high diversity and still a lot of peace and lack of disparity is very similar in many middle-sized European cities. I mean, I think you can nominate about 500 middle European cities, you know, like Zurich, Basel, Amsterdam, Strasbourg, Brussels, etc., where this condition has been maintained for a very long time. And there's definitely, I don't specifically feel a Dutch design approach or a Dutch ambience. I mean, I feel very different when I do a project in Singapore. We only did 2 projects, but I feel very at home in the kind of general European city as my heimat, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Stefan, what do you think about this?
Of course, I completely agree. I mean, of course, there are things. I mean, each time, let's say, going somewhere else, it's a lot of questions, and it's tried to. Of course, that's also related with the methodology, just to analyze, just to understand what is exactly the question. Is it the right question, and how to try to bring the best answer. And I think the fact that, let's say, I have the feeling that I'm a citizen of Europe, and maybe a European architect, maybe as all of us we are. So I do not really feel, is it a positive or negative, but I think the culture is so, I mean, quite similar. There are some differences, and we have to catch the differences. We have to understand exactly. So I think for me, this is what is fantastic. I mean, just to do let's say, I'm deeply related with the territory where I live, but it's true that we deeply with Stephanie just to work somewhere else, because suddenly we just have to be. We have to open our eyes, listen, try to understand, try to catch what is so specific, and I think that's a fantastic chance. So I don't know exactly if it was, I mean, but we have, let's say, the team is from, Jan is from Zurich, Charlotte and Dries, I mean, they are not really from Basel, but they live in Basel for a long time, and that's the way let's say, we share different opinions, and we try to see by combining different opinions what could emerge from this collaborative work. So I think this is really important. So I think it's not so deeply related with where you come from, what is your culture, and so on, but how you try to catch, let's say, the others, or let's say the otherness of a site, so the specifications of a site and so on, and just the way that the people leave a space. So. But that's a chance we have. So it's just traveling, but it's not traveling for, let's say, for as a tourist, but just to really understand the space and how to transform the space, because this is, let's say, what we try to achieve. But considering, let's say, the way that the people leave the space. So that's. That's a super interesting question about this citizen of Europe or citizen of the word LLC. I don't know. For the moment, we just work in Europe, and it's fantastic in itself, and that's fantastic opportunities just to question ourselves about who we are and are we so different. So, but that's probably not the right debate but that's super interesting.
But it would be good to have a session on what is left of Genius Loci. Because in the last 30 years, there has been an enormous amount of uniformization and homogenization going around in the world. And it's very interesting to talk about that, what is left of Genius Loci in architecture and urban design. So for instance, if you, the architecture across the whole world is the same because they all use the same aluminium window profiles and glass stuff. So it's not in the material technology of the facade. It's something else.
Yes, but on the other hand, I mean, both those projects, Nauntor and also Europali, work very intensely with the existing structure of the city. So with the grid of the city and also the communicating parts of the city. So, and those are quite different. So maybe in the detail, actually, there is a kind of a homogenization, as you have told. But then in the substructure, so the urban level.
Yeah.
Then you have the big differences, and maybe that's also an answer to the question of arriving into a city, because this commercial uses, I mean, the transportation and marketplace, that was it has always been the beginning of cities. So cities always evolved around those marketplaces. The marketplaces arrived at crossroads. So it was just like really basic, and maybe we can also see the thing in a positive way. So not complaining about the railway stations becoming shopping malls, but to recognize, okay, maybe they are becoming centers, new centers in these cities with a lot of new opportunities. And I think the point is to find the balance between commercial uses, public uses, and transportation. And so I'm not sure if I really get the point, but maybe you can say something to this.
I always make a joke about the Europalais, because we expected much more diverse and colorful buildings within our building guiding guidelines. But it didn't happen. And this is the result of the kind of homogeneous, modest, concrete-like attitude of the Swiss architects.
Yeah, that's quite possible. Who wants to ask provocative questions? Yes, I see a hand there, because that's really an issue. Maybe you're right.
Thank you. I have a question from the Basel project. 60 years ago, as a young architect from Sutter and Sutter, I was the winner of the competition of this existing project called now Rostbalken. My question is, who will finally decide how much for the existing building you can use in your new project?
So congratulations for the work that you did. And I have to say that, so now I teach for 5 years, and through those 5 years, I really did a fantastic discover I mean, Sutter and Sutter practice. And I don't know everything about the project they did, but I have to confess that I was, I mean, deeply impressed by the work. So it's not the answer to your question, but just to express a serious interest and consideration for the practice of this office and partly of your practice in a way, considering Nauntor. Then it's true that, so it was a long process. And of course, even if the process was quite long, you do not really solve everything. So you just try to draw, but not as a drawing, but just to define an ambitious and maybe a way to do. And but you cannot, so you have to design several things by considering that maybe this is not the most important part of the project, but let's really find this statement about the urban ambitions of the project, what the project should solve, and so on. So that's why what we try to present today, not to talk about the facade or let's say what it is and what it will be, because I think it's too long to say now what will happen in 5 or 10 years. So we have time, as you probably know, that just to really think about the transformation of this urban situation. And it's true that the wish is just to keep probably more than what we said, and probably just either a way just to reuse, let's say the steel elements of the facade. Either a way just to use them in a different way, as a shading system, or let's say just as a balcony. So I think this is really the process that we try. We are not exactly here at the moment, honestly. We have to solve different questions. Let's say how do we deal with the railways and so on. So it's a lot of questions, super exciting questions, but it's true that at the moment it's really difficult to talk about all the details that will be important in the coming steps. But we try to go step by step, just to be sure, because let's say it's quite. There are a lot of parameters, and then so I think the fact that we have time, I think it's a chance. I mean, it's a chance for the city. It's a chance in a way for us that we have time to discuss with the city, just to discuss with the clients, to discuss with the SBB, and just to also with the inhabitants, because the inhabitants were also involved in the process, so they also have their opinion to give, and I think it was a crucial opinion for the jury. So I think that's this is what we appreciate deeply in the process, or let's say in the procedure, or let's say in the way to do the project. We don't do a design and let's build it. You know, let's say we have the time. And I think this is the question that we should discuss probably a little bit more. Let's say how to include. Let's say how to include, not to do, let's say just to produce a project by collecting all the opinions and doing the average of the opinions, because it will probably produce the worst outcome. But try to listen exactly, let's say, what is really essential, not only for the experts that we are. We are experts, but we do not have all the knowledge. We do not, let's say, sometimes talking with the inhabitants is quite crucial, because it could completely reverse an image of the problem. So, I mean, I'm sure that it's not exactly the answer that you expect, but so I think, considering the constellation, the organization of the work, the deadlines and so on, we really try to, let's say, integrate as much as possible all the things that are important. And yeah, but we were for fixed, let's say, after the competition decision. So I don't know if it's good or not, but I have the feeling that it's super good. No, context, or let's say stimulating environment, that you really feel that there is a wish just to achieve the best. If you have this ambitious and if you feel that you are supported, I mean, you fly, you know. So I think that's really important, just to, let's say, feel that there is this ambitious environment.
I'm really sorry, but we have to stop here. Yes. So, but I think that actually that was a quite an elegant conclusion, because we are talking about the future, we are talking about development, we are talking about long-term development and keeping options open. So have time to think a second time and a third time, and also to allow all the stakeholders to intervene, to bring their expertise. So in order to create really open places, diverse places that are able to evolve in time, in use, in shape, in design. So actually, if this happens, then you are really right. Then you really fly, and then it is really the best case for a city, because those are the elements that shape the city. And if those gateways to the cities can become like super cities, where all those positive elements are just concentrated, then actually that would be really, really great. And so I'm very happy about this discussion, and I thank you very much for the questions. I'm really sorry we hadn't have time for more, but maybe we can continue the discussion later. Thank you very, very much for all the contributions, and thank you, Christian, who organized all this, and you are our host. I give you back the microphone. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you very much, Alexander, Kees, and Judith, for moderating. If you want to see this, you can load it down or see it as a podcast or at Architekturdialoge.ch. We are looking forward to see you at over 20 events this year in 24, and especially, and last but not least, we have the second edition of the biannual Architekturwoche Basel from September 7th to 14th with many, many events. And thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for your contribution, and have a nice evening. Thank you. If you are not a friend of Architekturdialoge yet, you should fill out this or go on the website to register. Thank you.